Welcome to the Shulamite Podcast, an extension of Shulamite Ministries and Shulamite.com, with weekly interviews and teaching with author and speaker Martha Kilpatrick and hosted by John Enslow. This weekly podcast is a way to stay connected to the ministry. So come experience anointed messages, not giving just another method, but a living impartation.
We tend to look at something like that, like go work, or God putting us to work. It's not high enough. That's too base. That's exactly. That is low. That is low barn. And with but it's interesting to me because irresponsibility, I have seen that there are so many roots and ties and triggers and to irresponsibility. And I always thought irresponsibility was, part laziness, part bitterness. And it was a very limited picture that I had of it. But John, when you mentioned beauty and the chickens and all the rest of that, what it prompted with me, with the chickens, I was just fed up. If I saw one more bodily fluid that wasn't mine and that was that gross, I was done. I was going to kill them all myself. And then there'd be a reason for it. I had a breakdown, but it was, mostly anger based, just enough. This is like a Pollock painting in here. I'm out. But beauty was fear. Visceral fear. God sent me a dog. I had never had a pet in my life. No, I don't consider our cockatiel. It doesn't count. It's a stupid bird. Never had a pet. Never had another being, living, breathing being that had to be fed and cared for, depending on me. And so for the first 2 to 3 years of Beauty's life, it was a horror for her and for me. That's just the truth. I worried about her when I wasn't there. I was like, where is she? Where'd she go? I couldn't figure it out. She cut her ankle. She got bit by a snake or something. She, went off and tried to get pregnant and whatnot. And so she had to get fixed. I mean, it just every time I turned around, there was something else that this little being was demanding of me and that I was somehow failing in doing for her. And when she got mauled by the bear, which led to that podcast, Chickens and Beauty. I love that title. But each time that happened, it was fear that was keeping me from fully getting into my responsibility and taking my authority. I was terrified that I was going to somehow cause harm to this creature. And in fact, that opened the door to I don't know how many harms that happened to this dog of mine because I believed it. I believed in it and I brought it to fruition. And that irresponsibility that led to serious trauma for John and his desire to be clean and bodily fluid free as well. On the porch.
There's bodily fluid off of my face.
It was very dramatic. It was a very dramatic moment. My dog is very dramatic too. So there was stuff squirting everywhere and John did get hit in the face. But that took place because it was all fear. It doesn't change the fact that it was irresponsibility. But when you're in the fear, you don't see it as irresponsibility. You see it as, but I'm afraid and somebody out there knows better, And I've just never seen how many different approaches there are to irresponsibility. As many sins as there are in the world, each one somehow has a bridge to irresponsibility. They're connected. They'll lead you straight to it. There's just no question because I find, or maybe it's just me, but every color of the rainbow has been represented with that. And, and it was such a simple lesson. And I've never had anything, people go to healings and they want to see miracles and all the rest of that. I had a miracle on my porch because I saw chaos and it was gross and there was a body count. And the very next day, in fear and trembling, it wasn't like my fear left, but the fear was no longer driving. That was no longer an excuse for me not to step out and into what I did. And it was night and day. It was as if an angel had come down in place. And there was no anxiety on the part of my drama dog. My anxiety went out the window as soon as I stepped forward to do what I was supposed to do. And it was easy and quick and done. And I sat there 2 minutes later, with all the medicines in, with all the wounds flushed, with all the done. I didn't gag once. She didn't move. She sat there. She sat there calm. Her tail occasionally wagged. There was no whimpering, no yelping. It was ridiculous how easy it was and how completely opposite of what it had been in irresponsibility. And all I can say is whatever else we might think about it, it is medicine that is miraculous. We don't see it that way. But Carol, what you had for 5 years was a medicinal treatment in the form of work. And every single really big breakthrough in my life really has involved that, has involved me stepping into the practical responsibility and reaping dividends on the high mountains in my relationship with him. I have never had a mountaintop experience with him that didn't start in a place of bleh, or just, I just haven't. And I think we don't value it at all. And it is miraculous on every level.
Well, this is what I wrote down. One of the things that you said in the message of the month. Everything I have learned, I learned in the practical. Okay, so everything I have ever learned about God, I've learned in the practical, and that to me is phenomenal, because that's completely counter opposite to anything super spiritual. Literally counter opposite. And because everything that you learn super spiritually, you learn in the grandiose, the glorified, the delusional, but it's all in the experience and not the labor. That's a good way to look at it. But that's not been anything that I've learned from God. I can't think of it. I'm literally trying to think of something I've learned in some kind of mountaintop. There's been an experience, and I've experienced him, but that's not where the revelation came. The revelation came in the valley of humiliation. It was tested. It was revealed maybe on a mountaintop, but that's not where I got it. I got it in the low baseland. In the basic obedience, absolutely. It was in the lowlands. The lowlands are where you learn who God is, and then he reveals himself. Go ahead, please.
And see, it's the low place. Jesus said, you love the high places. You love the seats of honor. You love to be seen by men. I'm writing about that right now. But the super spiritual will not take the low place. In fact, someone came in our group and God said, you go in and you take the lowest place. And they didn't. Would not. Repeated what God said, admitted what God said, but never did it. Took the high place and fell off the roof.
Wow, that's a good one.
That's so.
It's just a funny way of saying it.
You all judge this, but it seems to me, as I look back, that the super spiritual live by a supposed to principle. They look at the Word of God, they listen to what other Christians say, and they do what they're, quote, supposed to do. And they skip over any reality. So they won't go to the low place because that's not where they're supposed to be. I'm speaking from experience here. So that's why you can skip from letter A to letter Z. Because letter A says, this is the way it should look, this is what it should look like. This is the facade you should have. And so we go to Z, and so that's the facade I will have. Rather than allowing the low place to bring you to the experience of God himself. I don't believe super spiritual people, I know I didn't have real encounters with the living God. There were no real encounters. You may have an encounter and get excited in your flesh about something that's going on, but not an encounter in relationship with the living God. And I lived by what I thought I was supposed to be. And so it was a facade. It was a pseudo Christianity. Everything about it was pseudo. It wasn't. It was an escape of the real because of irresponsibility, because of a refusal to go to the low place, to be in that much need, to be honest enough to see who you really, really were on the inside.
I see from what you're saying the trap. The trap is I'm in this state and I'm afraid to be seen, and I'm afraid to face it because I don't know how to face it, and I don't know how to get out. And so it is a trap, and that's why we as believers have to have some input into it, whether it's a prayer or a relationship or a separation. I believe very much in separation, because if you won't be alone with God, then God orchestrates for you to be alone.
Well, in my case, I believe, and I don't know if I'm getting into something that going to a place that we don't need to go yet, but in my condition where I was, the reason the separation eventually worked was because before any of that occurred, he had bound you and I together, Martha, by love. There wasn't based on reality, but God's love had come to me, and caused me. I don't know how he did it. Honestly, I don't know how he did it, but he caused me to see that that I had an authority, that he'd given me an authority, and I had to bow to that authority. And I believe that bowing to the authority eventually is what brought me out.
But you had to be loved before you could bow your life to another's will, right?
That is absolutely true.
We hope you've enjoyed the Shulamite podcast. For all the latest from Shulamite Ministries, please visit us at shulamite.com, where you'll find Martha's daily devotions, posts from getalongwithgod.com, and the online library of all of Martha's writings. At shulamite.com, downloading the free Shulamite app is easy, and livingchristianbooks.com is only a click away. Thank you for joining us on this journey to discover a God worth knowing.